Welcome to Midnight Shadows. I'm your storyteller, here to bring you haunting tales wrapped in a soothing embrace of rain sounds to help you relax and fall asleep. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to join our growing community. Let me know, where are you tuning in from, and what time is it for you right now? Now, settle in, get cozy, and let the shadows guide you to a peaceful night. The text buzzed his phone just as he reached for the popcorn. It was a simple message, but it turned his blood cold. You're really enjoying that show, aren't you? He froze mid-bite, his eyes darting to the window. Was someone watching him? Ryan had moved into the quiet suburban neighborhood a few months ago. It was supposed to be a fresh start after his messy divorce, a place to rebuild his life in peace. His modest one-story house sat on the corner of a cul-de-sac, where the only sounds were chirping crickets and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. The living room was his sanctuary, complete with a cozy couch, a 55-inch TV, and a view of the street through sheer curtains. That night, he had settled in for his favorite crime drama, completely unaware of the sinister turn his evening was about to take. As the opening credits rolled, he received the first text. "Nice choice. I love that show too." Thinking it was a friend, Ryan typed back, "Who's this?" No reply. Shrugging it off as a wrong number, he turned his attention back to the TV. But the texts didn't stop. "I can see why you like it, great taste. That couch looks comfy." Ryan's heart began to race. He glanced around the room, scanning for cameras or anything that seemed out of place. His phone buzzed again. This time, the message was accompanied by a photo of his living room, taken from the perspective of the street. He bolted to the window and peered outside, but the street was dark and quiet. No movement, no sound, except for a faint hum coming from a car parked across the street. Its engine was running, and the silhouette of someone in the driver's seat was barely visible. Ryan's hands trembled as he typed out a response. "Who are you? What do you want?" No reply. He called the police, reporting a suspicious vehicle. They assured him a patrol car would swing by shortly. Minutes felt like hours as Ryan paced the room, his eyes darting between the window and his phone. The patrol car arrived, and the suspicious vehicle sped off before the officers could intervene. They told Ryan it was probably nothing, a bored teenager or someone playing a prank. But Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The following night, the texts resumed. "Why'd you call the cops? That wasn't very nice. You're making this less fun for me." Ryan felt the walls closing in. He installed extra locks on his doors and even purchased a security camera, but none of it made him feel safer. The texts became more personal, referencing details about his life that he hadn't shared with anyone. "How's your new job? Long hours must be tough. You really should get better curtains. These don't do much for privacy." Then came the breaking point. Ryan woke up to find a note slipped under his front door. It simply read, "You can't hide from me." Attached to it was another photo, this time of him sleeping. Desperation turned to paranoia. Ryan called in sick to work, afraid to leave the house. He spent hours reviewing footage from the security camera, but whoever was tormenting him seemed to know how to avoid being caught. One night, he decided to confront the situation head-on. Armed with a flashlight and a baseball bat, he waited in the darkened living room, determined to catch his stalker. Around midnight, he spotted the same car parked across the street. Summoning all his courage, Ryan stepped outside and approached the vehicle. As he got closer, he realized the windows were heavily tinted. He banged on the driver's side window. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" The door creaked open, but no one was inside. The car was empty. His phone buzzed again. "Nice try. Better luck next time." The torment escalated. Ryan began hearing faint noises in the house, whispers, footsteps, the creak of floorboards. He changed his locks, but it didn't help. He started finding small objects moved around, his keys left in strange places, his favorite mug shattered on the kitchen floor. The final straw came when he found a message scrawled on his bathroom mirror in red lipstick. "I'm closer than you think." Ryan couldn't take it anymore. He packed up his belongings and moved out, leaving the house and the nightmare behind. But as he settled into his new apartment in a different city, he received one last text. "You can run, but you can't hide." The screen faded to black, and the sound of a faint laugh echoed as rain began to fall. The lingering question hung heavy in the air. Who was behind the texts, and why had they targeted Ryan? The sound of the doorknob rattling jolted him from his daze. It wasn't just the wind, and he knew it. Someone was outside his apartment, trying to get in. His heart raced as he glanced at the unlocked door just feet away. Ethan had always considered himself cautious, especially after moving to the city. Living alone in a small apartment on the 4th floor of an old building, he took comfort in the relative safety of his complex. The place was far from perfect: creaky floors, dimly lit hallways, and a temperamental elevator, but it was home. After a long day at work, Ethan had settled onto his couch, unwinding with reruns of an old sitcom. The warm glow of the TV and the faint hum of traffic outside were soothing, lulling him into a comfortable haze. That evening, he had left the door unlocked, a rare lapse in judgment. He'd stepped out briefly to throw the trash, and in his rush, he forgot to turn the deadbolt. The first sign of trouble came around midnight. A faint noise caught his attention, a sound that didn't belong, a soft, deliberate jiggle of his doorknob. Ethan froze, the remote slipping from his hand. He muted the TV, and his apartment was plunged into an eerie silence, broken only by the continued rattling of the handle. It wasn't his imagination. Someone was trying to open his door. Panic surged through Ethan as he crept toward the door, his socked feet silent against the worn floorboards. His breath caught in his throat when the rattling stopped. Had they given up? He leaned closer, peering through the peephole. The hallway light flickered, casting unsettling shadows, but he could make out a figure. The person was wearing a dark hoodie, the hood pulled low over their face. The intruder leaned toward his door as if listening, their hand hovering over the knob. Ethan's stomach twisted. What if they managed to get inside? The thought of being face to face with a stranger in the middle of the night was enough to send chills down his spine. He reached for the lock, his hand trembling. Slowly, carefully, he turned the deadbolt until it clicked into place. The sound was louder than he expected, and the figure outside snapped to attention. Through the peephole, Ethan watched as the intruder stepped back, their face still obscured. They stood motionless for what felt like an eternity before moving to the next apartment. Ethan's neighbor, Mrs. Porter, was an elderly woman who rarely locked her door. Heart pounding, Ethan hesitated. Should he call the police? Warn Mrs. Porter? He glanced at his phone on the coffee table, torn between fear and urgency. As he debated his next move, the intruder tried another door. Then another. Each attempt was slow and deliberate, as though they were testing the locks, searching for an easy target. Finally, the hooded figure stopped in the middle of the hallway and turned toward Ethan's door. Their body language was tense, almost predatory, as they stared directly at the peephole. Ethan held his breath. Did they know he was watching? The hooded figure tilted their heads slightly, as if contemplating something. Before turning and walking toward the stairwell, Ethan waited until the sound of footsteps faded before releasing the breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hands were clammy, his mind racing. Grabbing his phone, he called the police and reported the incident. Officers arrived shortly after, but by then, the intruder was long gone. They commended Ethan for locking his door just in time, noting that other residents had reported suspicious activity in the area recently. The police conducted a sweep of the building and advised everyone to double-check their locks. Mrs. Porter, thankfully, had been asleep with her door bolted shut. Ethan couldn't shake the image of the hooded figure staring through his peephole. That night, he barely slept. Every creak of the building, every shadow cast by passing headlights, felt like a threat. The next day, Ethan installed additional security measures, a reinforced deadbolt, a chain lock, and a doorbell camera. He also made a mental note never to leave his door unlocked again, even for a moment. But even with the added precautions, he couldn't shake the memory of the intruder's presence. Memorable ending. A week later, Ethan received an alert on his phone from the doorbell camera. Reviewing the footage, he saw a hooded figure standing in the hallway outside his door, just out of reach of the camera's full view. They stood there for several minutes before walking away. Ethan couldn't help but wonder, had the intruder come back for him? The TV screen flickered, cutting off the show mid-episode. The couple exchanged confused looks, but before they could react, a photo appeared on the screen, a picture of them from their anniversary last month. They hadn't connected their phones to the TV. Liam and Mia had just moved into their cozy suburban rental. The place wasn't brand new, but it had a charm they both loved: a spacious living room, a small but functional kitchen, and a sliding glass door that opened to a quiet backyard. It was a Friday night, and they were unwinding with their favorite true crime show, their dog Luna curled up by their feet. Outside, the faint sound of rain pattered against the glass, adding to the relaxing atmosphere. As they debated the case unfolding on screen, Mia's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it, a reminder to update her passwords, something she had been procrastinating on. Ugh, they're always so paranoid about this stuff, she muttered, tossing her phone onto the coffee table. Maybe it's not paranoia, Liam replied, smirking. The world's full of hackers these days. He gestured dramatically at the TV, making Mia laugh. Neither of them realized how quickly their laughter would turn into unease. The TV suddenly froze, then flickered, displaying static for a few seconds. That's weird, Liam said, grabbing the remote. Before he could change the input, an image appeared, a photo of them, taken from Mia's Instagram. Wait, is that? Mia began, her voice trailing off. Yes, Liam confirmed, his tone serious now. That's your profile picture from last week. The images continued to change. More photos, all from their social media accounts. A picture of their dog. A selfie from their recent hike. The mood in the room shifted from confusion to dread. Is this a prank? Mia asked, but Liam's expression told her he didn't think so. Then came the knock. The knock was loud and deliberate, echoing through the quiet apartment. They both froze. Luna, sensing the tension, let out a low growl. Who could that be? Mia whispered, her voice barely audible. Liam motioned for her to stay back as he approached the front door. Who's there? He called out, but there was no response. The rain outside had picked up, the sound growing louder as it drummed against the windows. He checked the peephole. The hallway was empty. When he opened the door, there was no one there. Just a puddle forming on the doormat from the rain. As he closed the door, Mia's voice called out, trembling. Liam, look. He turned to see her pointing at the sliding glass door in the living room. The curtains were slightly parted, and through the rain-streaked glass, a figure stood in the backyard. The man wore a dark hoodie, the hood pulled low to obscure his face. His stance was unnerving, motionless, like a predator watching its prey. What does he want? Mia asked, panic creeping into her voice. Liam grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen and shone it toward the glass. The man didn't flinch, didn't move. It was as if he was taunting them. Call the police, Liam said, his voice steady despite the fear building inside him. Mia grabbed her phone, but the moment she dialed, the figure suddenly bolted, disappearing into the shadows of the backyard. The police arrived within minutes, but there was no trace of the man. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. They assured the couple that they'd patrolled the neighborhood, but couldn't guarantee much else. That night, Mia couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt ominous, every shadow a potential threat. Liam stayed up with her, keeping a baseball bat within arm's reach. The next day, Liam decided to check their home's devices. He wasn't particularly tech-savvy, but something about the incident didn't sit right with him. As he scrolled through the settings on the TV, he noticed a connected device that wasn't theirs. Someone had remotely accessed their screen through an unknown phone. This is how they did it, Liam said, showing Mia. They hacked into the TV. Mia was horrified. But why? Just to scare us? Maybe, Liam replied, though he wasn't convinced. The couple spent the rest of the day securing their home, installing cameras, changing passwords, and blocking access to all their devices. But the sense of violation lingered. That evening, while reviewing the camera footage, Liam spotted something that sent chills down his spine. The masked man had returned. He stood in the backyard again, staring at the house. This time, he held a phone, recording the property before vanishing once more. Liam and Mia didn't sleep that night, the weight of the intruder's presence pressing on them. Days later, they decided to move out, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. As they packed their things, Mia received a text from an unknown number. "Nice place. Shame you're leaving so soon." What would you do if someone hacked into your devices and invaded your privacy like this? Have you ever had a chilling experience with technology? Share your story in the comments below. As the faint creak echoed through the house, Ryan froze. His heart began to race, the sound cutting through the soft hum of the TV. It wasn't the cat, it was heavier, deliberate. The kind of sound that sent chills crawling up your spine. Ryan had always loved the quiet of late-night TV. With a cup of coffee in hand and his tabby cat, Jasper, curled up beside him, it was his way to unwind after long days at work. His modest home sat at the edge of a sleepy suburban neighborhood, surrounded by a few scattered trees that swayed in the wind. The living room, bathed in the flickering glow of the screen, was warm and familiar. Framed pictures of family adorned the shelves, and the faint aroma of lavender from a nearby candle filled the air. It was a night like any other, until it wasn't. A soft thud pulled Ryan's attention away from the sitcom playing on the TV. He glanced toward the kitchen but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Probably Jasper, he thought, dismissing it. But then came another sound. A shuffle, faint yet distinct, rising from below. Ryan frowned. The basement. Jasper hated the basement. Grabbing his phone, he stood up, his eyes fixed on the dark hallway leading to the basement door. The unease settled like a heavy weight in his chest. As he approached, the sound stopped. The silence was almost worse. "Jasper," he called out, his voice trembling slightly. No response. His hand hovered over the doorknob when another sound came, a sharp metallic clang, unmistakably coming from the basement. Ryan's mind raced. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe a tool had fallen. Maybe it was just an old pipe. But deep down, he knew better. He flicked on the basement light, but it did little to pierce the shadows below. The wooden steps creaked as he descended halfway, his phone flashlight in hand. He paused, listening intently. And then he saw it, a shadow, moving just out of reach of the light. Ryan's breath hitched. He turned and bolted back up the stairs, slamming the door shut behind him. He locked it, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He backed away, staring at the door, willing it to stay shut. That's when he heard it, the distinct sound of footsteps ascending the basement stairs. Grabbing his phone, Ryan dialed 911, whispering into the receiver as he locked himself in his bedroom. The operator's calm voice did little to soothe his nerves as he explained the situation. But the footsteps didn't stop. They grew louder, closer. A faint rattle of the doorknob sent Ryan's panic into overdrive. Jasper let out a low growl, staring intently at the bedroom door. Ryan clutched a small lamp, his only makeshift weapon. The minutes stretched into an eternity as he waited, every sound magnified by his pounding heart. Suddenly, the rattling stopped. The silence was deafening. Ryan's phone vibrated, the police were outside. Relief flooded his body as he heard the faint sound of a voice calling out. But then came a new sound, one that chilled him to the core, faint, deliberate footsteps wandering through the house. Act 3, Climax and Resolution. Ryan held his breath as the footsteps grew more erratic, moving from room to room. He dared not make a sound. Outside, the red and blue lights of the police car illuminated the curtains, casting eerie shadows. A loud bang shattered the tense silence. The police had broken in. Shouts echoed through the house, followed by the distinct sound of a struggle. When the officers finally called out, "It's safe now," Ryan emerged, trembling. The intruder had been found wandering in the kitchen, mumbling incoherently. He was disheveled, his clothes dirty and torn. When questioned, he simply smiled and said, "I just wanted to look around." The police assured Ryan the man would be taken into custody, but their words did little to calm his nerves. The next day, Ryan tried to return to normalcy, but the house no longer felt like home. Every creak, every shadow set him on edge. While cleaning up the living room, he found something that stopped him cold, a small, crumpled note tucked behind the couch. In shaky handwriting, it read, "Nice place. I'll see you again." What would you do if someone invaded your home like this? Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? Share your thoughts in the comments.